Wait, 1.75 ships. Yep. How do you build 1.75 ships? Look, I gotta go. Yep. Bye.
Headline of the month. Germany is in dire straits regarding its budget for the current fiscal year.
Tax robbery, tax robbery. Taxes are extorted from the poor.
The interfactional negotiations on the budget are proving to be extremely difficult.
Something like the resignation of the Reich finance minister could occur, perhaps even the entire cabinet's resignation. A jokester's economy. Where is the reduction in spending?
900 million in new taxes are being squeezed out of the German people.
I'm Indy Neidell.
I'm Spartacus Olsson.
This is the rise of Hitler.
Welcome to the Weimar Wire. February 1930 has been full of activity, both on the streets and in Parliament. Stay tuned for the best and most complete update about what is happening in and around Germany. But let me briefly recap what happened in January. There were several violent clashes between Nazis and communists, but the Nazis enjoyed their first major electoral victory in Thüringen.
The Young Plan, a new payment scheme for German reparations, was agreed upon at the Second Hague Conference. Many Germans have an issue with this, and whether the plan will pass the Reichstag is anybody's guess.
All of this was overshadowed by the effects of the New York stock market crash a few months ago, leading to a continuously worsening economic crisis.
In terms of the political landscape, on the regional level, the Nazis have really broken into the political mainstream, with a ministerial position no less.
They've gone from 3.5% of the vote in 1928 to 11.3%.
27.
No, 28.
My notes say...
The election was in 28.
Okay, fine.
They've gone from 3.5% of the vote in 1928 to 11.3% now, highlighting their rise in popularity and perhaps foreshadowing more successes to come.
And now, on to the Weimar Wire Political Indicator, brought to you by Time Ghost, gauging the political trends each month. In February, some trends remain the same, with Nazis and communists on the up, as recession and rising unemployment continue to worry the people.
At the same time, members of the current governing coalition consisting of the Bürgerblock, traditional far-right to center-right, and the SPD, the Social Democrats and Germany's largest party, experience a downward trend. You'll soon see why this might be the case. It has to do with perceived government deadlock and failure to act.
Back to the news. But wait. Okay, I'm confused. Now, I heard about luxury tax increases, and I see, in front of me, mineral water, but more importantly, cigarettes, coffee, tea, and beer. So don't tell me that they're gonna like sort of raise like a...
We'll get back to that later. The top headlines first.
Okay. The inner city of Hamburg has been turned into a battle zone. Or has it? It depends on whom you ask.
Nazi militant Horst Wessel, hospitalized in January, dies this month from his wounds, and the actual circumstances of his murder are revealed.
Tensions flare between Germany and Poland as the tariff war becomes entangled with the Young Plan.
Quarreling at the London Naval Conference, no one sees eye to eye.
Tensions also flare between the far left and the establishment right at the beginning of the month. There's even an overall nervousness in Germany's largest cities. Communist Party functionaries have kept themselves busy, agitating crowds of the poor and dissatisfied in the pubs and in the factories.
They call for a blood-red February, a violent uprising against the Republic beginning already on the 1st.
Daily 3,000 more expelled and 20,000 more unemployed. From today, February 1st, new exploitation of the working people. Defend yourselves against the usury regime. Revolutionary mass struggle against the hunger coalition. End the state of siege by the social fascists. Streets free for the proletariat.
And indeed, already the night of January 31st, the Red February begins to gather steam. But the police are ready. The day before, alarms were raised in cities all across Germany. In Berlin, Police Chief Sörgiebel had declared a state of emergency, ordering all available officers to stay on duty the whole night of the 31st.
Apparently, though, this is not enough for the chief, because he's really preparing for an attack on Berlin. He even arranges for the transport of an entire infantry battalion from East Prussia to Berlin, gets hold of 18 armored cars, and gives surplus ammunition to his officers. Still not satisfied. He's also got loads of barbed wire and 1,500 hand grenades.
In Hamburg, Similar, although not as drastic, preparations have been made. Here, communist demonstrations have been prohibited since the beginning of this year. Yet, the communists have pushed ahead regardless of the consequences. Hamburg's police have been quick to respond, eagerly busting the gatherings with batons in hand. Brawls break out everywhere, the Rote Fahne reports.
The police turned the Gängerviertel into the scene of a veritable murder orgy today, without the slightest provocation. A 16-year-old was murdered by a targeted headshot. Another passerby received a skull-penetrating shot. Several proletarians were beaten by 10 men police squads with such force that skull caps burst and blood poured out of their mouths. The city center of Hamburg is in a state of war.
In Berlin, similar scenes unfold. Communists take to the streets of Neukölln and Wedding, blocking intersections, smashing windows, and looting stores. Violent clashes with the police seem inevitable.
In Charlottenburg, a group of policemen is ambushed by the Red Front fighters and brutally attacked. Another squad finds itself surrounded by hundreds of workers with brass knuckles and knives, and they're beaten to the ground.
Overall, the demonstrations last well beyond midnight. Around 30 people are arrested and 10 policemen are seriously injured in the capital. After this violent opening of the month, the communists organize strikes and hunger marches in response. Here, too, the state cracks down.
17 unemployed workers who were underway on their hunger march to Hamburg were arrested near Kiel. Arrest warrants have been issued against them, and they have been charged with high treason and the incitement of an insurrection.
That actually is something even the democratic newspapers deem inappropriate. The Hunger March to Hamburg was obviously only meant to be a demonstration, so it can hardly be regarded as a treasonous undertaking, or even less as an attempt at high treason.
In Hamburg, the epicenter of the communist uprising, the local government cracks down. While hundreds of construction workers are on strike, the Hamburgische Volkszeitung, the local community newspaper, is banned, and the local KPD head office is ransacked by police. Yet the communist account of the early hours of February 1st is not undisputed. The rest of the political spectrum reports a somewhat different beginning to February. The Nazis say,
the attempts by the Communist Party have failed in a spectacular manner. Given the grandiose predictions made in the communist press, the result is utterly devastating. Nowhere did the supporters manage to make any significant impression. All in all, it can be said that it has been an enormous loss for the prestige for the KPD, if that even still is possible.
Other newspapers paint a similar picture. Failed mobilization plans, communist chants falling on deaf ears. Even in Hamburg, everything is quiet. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. The communists may exaggerate some events, but the other parties have just as strong an incentive to downplay them.
The National Socialists, that's the Nazis, also have cause to grieve. Horst Wessel dies in the hospital as a result of his injuries, as Dr. Josef Goebbels, Gauleiter of Berlin and Member of Parliament, reports. With the formation of new abscesses, the bone and tissue fragments gradually dissolved. However, blood poisoning set in. Wessel succumbed to severe injuries early Sunday morning, the 23rd of February 1930, in St. Joseph's Hospital after unbearable suffering.
Initially, the Völkische Beobachter, the Nazi Party newspaper, just spoke of a tragedy, of a possibly fatal argument between Wessel, his landlady, and a prostitute. However, the police have discovered the circumstances of his death. It seems he is another victim of the ever-increasing violence between the far right and the far left.
Wessel and his landlady, Elisabeth Salm, had a serious falling out. She, a widow, sought out friends of her late husband, a former fighter in the Red Front. They showed little interest in her complaints about an SA man at first, but once they mentioned Wessel's name, things changed.
Yeah, you see, Wessel has been actively and successfully converting workers to the National Socialist cause in the reddest neighborhoods of Berlin. And perhaps threatened by his success, the Communist Party in Berlin, they spread flyers with Wessel's face on it, asking underneath, Sturmführer, worker murderer, how much longer?
Then a small band of Red Front fighters gathered to give Wessel a proletarian working over. One member of this group was Albrecht Ali Höhler, who had other plans.
Once the group arrived at Wessel's apartment, Höhler was the one who knocked on the door, and when Wessel opened it, he shot him in the face. Since then, Höhler and his accomplices have been behind bars awaiting trial. Wessel, though, will not be forgotten, according to Goebbels.
As I stand by his bed 2 hours later, I cannot believe that it is Horst Wessel. The half-open eyes stare glassily into the eternity that we all face. His mortal remains have given up struggle and conflict. Yet, I can feel almost physically his spirit rise to live on with us. He marches in our ranks in spirit. I see endless columns marching in spirit. He marches behind them. Many of them will not know him. Many will have gone where he now is. Many others will have come. The banners wave. The trumpets blast. The pipes sound. And from a million throats, the song of the German Revolution resounds. Raise high the flag!
These last 4 words are the beginning of a song composed by Wessel, the Horst Wessel Lied. In the 5 days since his death, it has exploded in popularity among his comrades in the SA and in the broader Nazi movement, and seems well on its way to becoming a hymn of the entire movement, and Wessel on his way to becoming a martyr. But he is only one of several SA members the Nazis have lost in violent clashes in the last month. The SA is the Nazis' paramilitary wing. In fact, the risks associated with being a member of the SA or just the Nazi Party have risen so substantially that there have been unforeseen consequences. On February 8th, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler himself tells the party,
"An insurance company has once again cancelled our party comrades' reinsurance against political assassination because the risk is too great. This is the current state of Germany. The slogan, 'Kill the fascists wherever you find them,' openly announced under the supervision of our current government, is bearing its bloody fruits. Party comrades, in light of this emergency, we are forced to declare that joining and paying contributions to our SA reinsurance is a party duty for all members. To be reprinted by all party newspapers. Signed, Adolf Hitler."
Another issue on the minds of the people is the relationship between Germany and Poland, a relationship now intertwined with the Young Plan. How this came to be can be answered by the Labor Minister of Germany, Rudolf Wissel.
The political linkage of both issues was the result of political pressure from Poland and the creditor powers, which the Reich government could not avoid. Should the Reich government attempt to shirk this obligation, major political difficulties will follow.
This intermezzo is commonly referred to as the Polish Treaty or the Polish Question in the papers. It is a complex issue with multiple factors. For one, there is the tariff war, which has raged since 1925. Both countries have imposed high import tariffs on each other's coal. With Germany previously having been the largest importer of Polish coal, this has sour the overall relationship.
This trade issue lies in the foreground of a deeper-running fundamental disagreement about the two states, the question of Poland's western borders. As you know, Germany had to cede territory after the end of the Great War, specifically right now, the Polish corridor and the free city of Danzig. Throw in the controversial referendum conducted in 1920 in parts of Silesia, and there is little wonder why these neighbors have not been getting along.
Connected to these territories is a German minority which still lives in the now Polish regions, who do suffer some discrimination at the hands of the Polish state. One central issue in this regard is the disproportionate dispossession of Germans through Polish agrarian reform. According to the Nazis, this is nothing more than
the robbery of German land in Poland, a claim which can be backed up by recent figures. It was recently calculated that so far, out of 41,000 hectares, Germans had to give up 31,000 hectares, which is over 75%, while their share of the usable area of large estates is only around 30%.
The liberal Vossische Zeitung further concludes, in light of these figures, it cannot be denied that the Polish agrarian reform in the so-called corridor area has been intensified in its anti-German intent. All of this is now supposed to be resolved as part of the Young Plan. To no one's surprise, as with all things Young Plan, the parties are divided on the issue once more, essentially left against right. The Social Democrats comment,
the efforts of Centrum and the DVP to separate the Polish treaty from the Young Plan can only be viewed with concern. A critical escalation looms here. Political tensions are also hitting the major powers. For the moment, the London Naval Conference is dead in the water.
There are disagreements everywhere. Italy and France, France and Britain, Britain and the US and Japan, all have some areas where they are unwilling to compromise.
Generally, the problems revolve around the accepted total tonnage of each country's navy, as well as the ratios of capital ships each country is to be allowed to have in relation to each other.
The Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 had the following provisions: 5-3 to 1.75 to 1.75 ratio of capital ships. In other words, for every 5 ships of the British or Americans, the Japanese could have 3, and the French and Italians only 1.75 ships.
The French and Italians are not willing to accept this, and neither are the Japanese. France demands, at the very least, equal treatment with Japan in all respects, while Italy stresses that it does not want to fall behind France.
How do you build 1.75 ships? Anyhow, since Japan wants a new ratio for auxiliary ships, such as heavy cruisers,
everything other than a capital ship is classified as an auxiliary ship, even a heavy cruiser. So basically just battleships and battle cruisers are capital ships.
Thank you. Okay, as we were saying, Japan wants a different ratio of 10 to 10 to 7. Since France wants the same as Japan and Italy the same as France, at the moment, the new ratios could look something like 10 to 10 to 7 to 7 to 7.
Similar discussions are held about submarines or the classification limits of some classes of ships. The British put forward the idea that light cruisers should not be heavier than 7,000 tons.
The French replied that overall fleet tonnage should be more important than individual ship tonnage, God. And the Americans are adamant that 10,000 tons should be the limit for light cruisers.
There has also been a few digs at each other. Italy declares that they are perfectly willing to commit to naval disarmament in all seriousness if, and only if, the French start to genuinely work towards it as well. In true French fashion, the French delegation is enraged by this. Clearly, reaching an agreement will take a while and is not of the utmost global urgency.
German Finance Minister Paul Moldenhauer, on the other hand, is focusing on an issue that cannot wait any longer. Germany is in big budgetary trouble, and economists paint a sinister picture. It is expected that Germany will suffer an income loss of at least 230 million Reichsmarks compared to 1929. Germany also has a new debt of 600 million Reichsmark payable by the end of March.
With rising interest, additional debts, and less foreign income overall, the economists predict that the total national deficit for this year could reach 1.35 billion Reichsmarks. Just to illustrate how grave the situation is, this deficit represents 18% of the entire government's revenue from last year. And again, revenue is projected to be lower this year.
Oh, okay, the Young Plan will provide some financial relief for the Republic, but there's still a deficit left of roughly 900 million Reichsmark.
This mainly stems from two sources. One is loans and interest rates, which amount to roughly 650 million. The other is unemployment insurance, which has skyrocketed with the economic turmoil, costing around 250 million in 1930.
So what does Moldenhauer propose? Well, cutting costs, raising taxes, and moving due dates. To tackle that 650 million, Moldenhauer proposes a slew of measures. First, debts from 1928 will not be settled this year, but next year, saving 154 million. Next, heavier taxes on superfluous luxury goods, which seems to be pretty much everything, will be introduced. Oh, okay, I get it. I mean, okay, beer, mineral water, coffee, tea, cigarettes.
Beer is hit the hardest, with a 75% increase on its tax.
Artichokes, assassins, bashi bazooks.
A measure accepted by all states, except, surprise, surprise,
Bavaria.
This alone will generate 240 million Reichsmarks. Here, the only saving grace is that tobacco, which initially was among the superfluous luxury goods, has been left alone for the time being.
The reduction of the corporate tax burden, originally supposed to be part of the Young Plan, has been rescinded. So corporate tax revenue will be higher. And Moldenhauer really wants to save on unemployment insurance. So he announces the government will only pay 150 of the projected 250 million needed.
To cover the remaining 100 million, he has instructed that the board of the Reichsanstalt should receive authorization to increase contributions, achieve savings in administration, or set the benefits otherwise.
Given all of this, the Nazis write,
The agenda items of Finance Minister Moldenhauer are so varied that it is difficult to see how all parties will be able to reconcile with all aspects of the program.
and seemingly they are right.
To say that the left, the communists, and the Social Democrats have major concerns is an understatement. The Rote Fahne exclaims,
Tax plunder! Tax plunder! Taxes are coerced from the poor, while the rich are granted relief and reductions. They intend to hike beer and tobacco taxes and decrease unemployment aid. Instead, cut the salaries of the high officials, reduce their pensions, away with the expenses for the Reichswehr and the Navy, get rid of all secret funds, bring in the luxury housing tax and the tightening of inheritance and wealth taxes.
The Social Democrats, for once, echo the communist concerns. Moldenhauer's proposals are an increase of the tax burden of the masses. Any even minimal contribution from property, such as in the form of emergency sacrifice, is not considered. The Moldenhauer program in its entirety is unacceptable for the Social Democrats. This program means a significant aggravation of the political situation.
At the same time, the right side of the political spectrum laments that the cutting of expenses does not, by any means, go far enough. Where are the budget cuts? The German people will never understand that in a budget whose expenditures have doubled since 1924, it is not possible to save a few hundred million. The Reichstag must not pass such a law. The bourgeois parties cannot justify new submissions to the will of the Social Democrats.
The DVP, the German People's Party, even goes so far as to suggest to use the funds from the disability and employment insurance to pay out unemployment benefits. The Center Party is left to wonder, as the Vossische Zeitung reports.
Between now and Thursday, March the 6th, many things can happen. Something like the resignation of the Reich finance minister, possibly even the entire cabinet stepping down.
Some see this as a bit too pessimistic. The Berliner Börsenanzeiger remarks, It is still more likely that the break in the cabinet and the coalition will occur only after and not before the adoption of the Young Plan.
In any case, together with the Young Plan, which we discussed last month, these budget problems pose a significant threat to political continuity in the Weimar Republic and could plunge Germany and its people into chaos.
February has left many open-ended questions.
Will the communists attempt to incite more violent protests in response to the worsening economic situation?
And more importantly, will these be more successful?
Will Horst Wessel and his song really become an icon and a hymn of the National Socialist movement in the future?
Will Germany and Poland succeed in normalizing their relationship, or will the issue be too difficult to overcome?
Will the major naval powers overcome their disagreements and sign the new Naval Disarmament Treaty?
And will the current German government coalition manage to agree on the finance minister's new plans, or will we, as some news outlets suggest, see a change of finance minister or even a change in government?
Well, we'll see what develops when we're back here at the end of March 1930. To help us get there, join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. It is the army that supports all of our productions and allows us to do all of what we do.
See you next time. Weimar Wire signing off.
Excelsior!